Ooh, welcome to Up in the Blue Seats, our New York Rangers podcast from the New York Post. Mike Rupp, Stanley Cup champion, former Ranger, one of my favorite analysts. You see him on NHL Network. Rupper will join us later in the show. Our Hockey Hall of Fame writer, Larry Brooks, is going to join us in just a minute. I'm Jake Brown, the podfather, along with the Queen of the Post, Rangers beat writer, Mollie Walker. Mollie, the Rangers are losers of 3 straight, and Tuesday night was a tough pill to swallow. One, because you blew a 2-goal lead for the second straight game, this time in the third period. You do it against the Islanders, who you now lost to twice. You do it to an Islander team that you only play one more time, which we've debated on this show before is a disgrace that their matchups against the crosstown rival are over in December, and we don't even see them again in 2023. And you do it after a controversial no tripping call against Wahlstrom on Kakko. 4 seconds later, game-winning goal. Your thoughts on the no tripping call?
Yeah, it was an egregious missed call for sure. It was a blatant trip, and let me tell you that Wahlstrom, he's got some serious bite to his game, and it was kind of fun watching Alexis Lafreniere kind of try to give him an answer for it, because Alexis Lafreniere has a little bit of that in him too. But it was definitely an egregious missed call, and you could tell that Rangers head coach Gerard Gallant was not happy. He didn't explicitly say his thoughts on the no call, because he's really just never been one to criticize the officiating, and he's always the first one to commend the officiating. Actually, he always talks about how difficult of a job it is. So I don't think he wanted to go down that road, but you could tell that he really was not pleased, and he was asking, you guys saw it, you guys saw how it all unfolded. So he definitely was not pleased, and why would you be? I do agree with him. Aside from the third period, I think the Rangers played one of their better games through the first 2 periods. But I think Vincent Trocheck said it pretty well. It kind of felt like they were playing not to lose. And that's just a trait that, they kind of have to nip that in the butt as soon as humanly possible, because that's not the way for a team like the Rangers to be playing. So it was a pretty deflating loss, and I think it'll be very telling to see how the Rangers move on from here.
All right, Mollie, well, let's get right into it with our Hockey Hall of Fame writer, Larry Brooks. Follow him on Twitter at NYP_Brooksie. The hat won today. What hat is that you have on, Larry?
Cornell Hockey. Okay. Proud supporter of the Big Red.
Well, the Big Reds playing a little bit better than the blue and white, the Rangers right now, the red, blue, and white, whatever we want to call it. The non-tripping call, Larry, let's start there. What happened there?
It was a non-tripping call. It appeared as if Kakko had possession of the puck along the boards, on the half wall or a little bit lower, and Wahlstrom tripped him, and it wasn't called. Whether it was just missed or ignored, so it's impossible to say, but but the Rangers did not react well to it, obviously, and it's probably foolish to cite one non-call as the reason. It's not the reason the Rangers didn't bring any kind of a game in the third period. It's when things go bad, they go bad. And you're not getting calls, you're not getting breaks, the puck's not bouncing right. But on the other hand, it is true that teams earn their breaks, and the Rangers really didn't earn any break in the third period last night.
I feel like
it was a missed call, but it was also a couple of misassignments following that. So it's not as if the puck went in when Kakko was tripped by Wahlstrom. So more there was much less to the defeat than that.
I feel like when they say when it rains it pours, it couldn't be any more true. And that was a pretty deflating one for the Rangers against the Islanders. I mean, you kind of touched on it on your overall assessment of how it unfolded, but could you also just speak to the vibes that you got in the locker room, because they were different than they have been after a lot of the other losses earlier this season?
There was concern. There was real concern, and There wasn't a heavy volume of players in the room, but when Adam Fox walks out and says, "Look, this isn't last year. We can't rely on last year." When Artemi Panarin says, Panarin, who's always looking for the good.
Yeah.
And he did, it wasn't all gloom, and it wasn't gloom and doom.
No.
But
Not yet.
Terry, it was close. I remember, I can just go on a tangent. I remember Brad Richards, when the Rangers went back to Tampa the first time. Brad Richards had, with the first time with Brad Richards after he had gone to the Rangers from Dallas. So it was Richie's first trip back, and at the morning skate, all of the Tampa writers were over talking to him about the cup the cup year and Tampa, and welcome back Richie, and welcome back Richie. So I kind of appeared from the background and was walking toward him, and Richie looks around to the group of Tampa writers. Oh, here comes gloom and doom.
Oh no!
Because he had not been playing well.
Yeah.
And I had just written a column about him. So,
but a little bit of a reality check from you.
Yeah, a reality check for Brad Richards. That's right. But anyway, when Artemi Panarin talks about, this has to change. Even Vincent Trocheck talking about a loss of confidence and no swagger. This one hit because they played a very, very strong 40 minutes last night, and they played a reasonable facsimile of the way they want to play and have to play. Shesterkin was very, very good. They were hard on the puck. They were drawing penalties. They forced the Islanders into 4 minors, and within 12 minutes, bridging the first and second. They had pretty good structure. They had good possession, scored twice on the power play. So their signature was all over the game. And, they give up the goal. They give up a goal 14 seconds into the third. Not sure if it was a great goal either. The pucks are going through Shesterkin, and you don't want to I'm not scapegoating the goalie. It's easy to do. But he won the Vezina last year. He carried them last year, and there's a certain dependence on the goalie being elite. They haven't, he hasn't been. So they give up the goal 14 seconds in, and their game just evaporated. They just this was not the first 40 minutes Rangers. This was as I said, give the Islanders all sorts of credit. I mean, they come back now. They have the best third period goal differential in the league. They have, it's interesting. It's not last year for the Rangers, but it's not last year for the Islanders either. It's like 2 years ago for the Islanders. 2 years ago for the Islanders. But, I don't think the Islanders seized the game as much as the Rangers left it there, because the Rangers just, didn't generate anything. There was no energy. And whether that's representative of a lack of confidence, I don't know. But it was a staggering defeat. Doesn't mean that they come back from it. There are 68 games left, so there is time to come back for it. But they have to get this straightened out quickly. They're they're below the cut line. Teams in the East are much better than they were last year. So this is 6 out of the next 7 on the road. It's going to be, they're facing a real challenge.
Going back to Igor Shesterkin, the one thing I've really noticed about him this season that was not so much a factor last season is his rebound control.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been the same. And I feel like a lot of teams have scored on putbacks or just battling around the net. I guess, are you seeing the same thing from him?
I think that's part of it. Yeah. And compounding that is the fact that the Rangers are just not defending the front of the net well at all. But yes, I see that, because I also see, and again, speaking for you, if I can, we're not goaltending experts, right?
Right.
We're just not. But he doesn't seem to be seeing the puck as well to me. and that might be a cause of why he's kind of stabbing at pucks and leaving those rebounds. He just doesn't seem to be tracking the puck as well. And I thought he did last night in the first two periods. That was one of the things early. I thought he was seeing through screens. He was in position. So again, I wouldn't have the first idea what to say to him about, hey, this is what you need. It's Chris Kreider kind of watching. Chris, you've got to move your feet. That's easy. Anyone can almost coach Chris Kreider. You've got to move your feet, Chris. I wouldn't have the slightest idea what to say to Igor Shesterkin. So, but there's a heavy burden on him, and I know, he's a younger player, but it's his fourth year in the league now, it's imperative that he regains whatever it is that he has lost, because the Rangers have no chance if he's an average goalie. None. Few teams do. I mean, it is almost impossible to win with average goaltending. Maybe if you have McDavid and Draisaitl, you can get by. But this team is built on their goaltending, and to a certain degree, their special teams and Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider. That's Fox. They're built on elite players. Nobody is playing close to elite hockey at this point.
I mean, stellar goaltending was their X factor last season. So was Chris Kreider, but confidence in who's in net has kind of always been the Rangers' trademark. Yeah. How concerned should people be if Shesterkin isn't giving the Rangers that otherworldly goaltending?
Very concerned, but I also go back to the standard that Lundqvist established, where he carried the Rangers basically for 12 years. He wasn't always at his best in October. In fact, early in his career, October, early November were the most mediocre of his seasons. So there is room for Shesterkin to turn this around, but he's an entirely different personality than Lundqvist is. This is a different team. It's a different scenario. But I would think there'd be a level of great concern if their goaltending does not rise to an elite status this year.
If you're Coach Gallant, you've already seen him make some lineup adjustments. What do you do to try to turn this around? What does Coach Brooksie do?
Well, one thing I would try and do, and I'm not sure how I'm going to be on my way to practice in a while, and we'll see we'll see who's available and if anything comes out of practice. But one thing I was thinking about writing is about, and it's a difficult challenge. I think they need to get Hedl onto the ice more. They have to find a way to get Hedl onto the ice more. He had about 12 minutes last night, I think. And I get it. I mean, Zibanejad is their first line center. Trocheck, who I thought played well last night, he was involved all night. He gets he's second line minutes, and so third line minutes for Hedl. But I think you need to find a way to get Filip Hedl onto the ice more often, and that's a real challenge. Now, I look at it, and I wouldn't mind reuniting the kid line and using them as their second line, but I'm not sure that can. I don't know how the rest of the team would you'd configure the rest of the team around that. You'd almost have to have a first line of Panarin, Zibanejad, and Kreider. I mean, unless you're putting Chris with Trocheck on the third line. And I know there's been I've received on social media messages and emails about you can't use Trocheck as the third line center when you're paying him $5.65. To me, that's not an issue. You don't make your lineup based on your payroll structure. That has nothing to do with it. It's would it make sense if Kreider, Trocheck, say, and VC, were their third line, but then that would mean Kravtsov would be on the first line, or would you move Goodrow up to play on the top line? I'm not sure, but I do think that this all goes back to trying to find a way to get Phil Petel more ice time, because again, he doesn't get on much on the power play. The second unit doesn't get much time on the power play. We know that. So there's just not there's not a lot of opportunity for him to be on the ice if you're going Zibanejad, Trocheck, who are both on the first power play, who are both among their top 4 on penalty killers. There's like we talked about this, I think, last week. There's a lot of ice time now being given to the top players on the team. And I think there's we're only 14 games into the season, and Zibanejad's minutes are up considerably. Trocheck's are up considerably from where Strome was last year. And I think there's got to be I think Gallant needs to find a way to smooth that out a little bit. I'm not suggesting that this would be an immediate turnaround. Last week I suggested that Seth Jones played with Trouba and didn't work out so well under one game. So I'm not a candidate for the coaching job. So, but I just would like to see a little bit more of Hedel. I'd like to see a little bit more of Lafreniere, who still needs to bring a more consistent game. He plays with more snarl against the Islanders than he does the other team in the league. I don't know why that is. He's always involved. He's always talking. Like the first 2 periods, Lafreniere last night was the playoff type Lafreniere in the Islanders' faces, the way it was in Pittsburgh's faces and Carolina's faces. He doesn't do that every game. I don't know what the dynamic is with him. But I'd like to see I'd like to see Lafreniere be more involved. And I think there's a comfort zone when he's playing with Hedel. And so that would be something I would look to do. Listen, this is who they have. You can't constantly rearrange the pieces either, but they haven't gotten to a point where it's possible to solidify their rotation either. And in a couple of their best years back in 13-14, 14-15, with Vigneault behind the bench, he changed things all the time. He used the first 2 or 3 months of the season as almost an extended training camp. I don't think this team can afford to do that, because I think the competition is too stiff. But they haven't found a formula that works, and so I don't think Gallant should be married to anything, but boy, I'd like to see the kids play together. But again, it's not about it's not about them. It's about constructing their more formidable team. And you'd have to take a real look again at what the first and third lines would be if you use the kids as the second line.
You can pick up a copy of the New York Post. You can go to nypost.com. You can go to Post Sports Plus, and you can follow him on Twitter at NYP_Brooksie. Larry Brooks, we'll talk to you next week. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
All right. Great stuff from Larry Brooks. And Molly, I expected better on a night where a guy shot the puck from center ice into a small little hole and won a Hyundai Tucson, whatever it was. Usually that I think of Jackie Moon and semi-pro, where they give him the fake check because they didn't think he was going to make the half-court shot. This guy really won a car. Days after, the guy had the half-court shot at the Garden. Knicks lost to the Celtics. Rangers lose to the Islanders. What the hell's going on? The fans have been more entertaining than the team they're going to watch.
I didn't even know about the half-court shot at the Knicks game, but that's pretty funny. It was absolutely wild. I think his reaction was the best part of the whole thing. Like, just the pure shock and awe on his face, and like the shot of him sitting in the car and waving and doing the surfs up hand gesture. It was really funny. It was good vibes.
They've given up 2 cars in a 4-day span at MSG. I think they've hit their quota. They might need a new sponsor to give out something else, give out like a washing machine like they did in semi-pro. But that was like a little crevice too. That's art. I don't know. What's tougher, you think, hitting that small little hole or hitting a half-court shot?
Probably the small little hole. Oh my God, especially when you're sliding it on the ice, like that can go anywhere. But we were actually all talking about it in the press box. We were wondering, does he just like drive out of the garden in that? Like if you've ever been in the lower level, there's like a very like long ramp that just goes down where like players park their cars and all that kind of stuff. And we were just wondering, does he just drive out of the arena in it? Like I wonder how that comes to be.
It's interesting giving away cars in New York City where like me and a lot of people don't have a car and don't have use for it. But hey, you know, pay the taxes and the rest, it's all yours, buddy. Enjoy the car. 2 cars in a week at the Garden. What's next? It's been a sideshow entertainment. It's like the Ringley Barnum Bailey circus at the Garden. Let's have these teams win some games now. How about that? Fans are winning everything. Well, a guy who won some games, won a Stanley Cup. It's got a beautiful dome. He's just got a big bald head like me, except a little bit shinier than mine because he's on TV. That's Mike Rupp. He's going to join up in the blue seats next. All right, joining us now, you catch him on the NHL Network, of course, where he is an analyst. He is the host of the That's Hockey Talk podcast. You can watch every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. He's a Stanley Cup champion with the Devils. He played parts of 2 seasons with the Rangers. Follow him on Twitter at Rupper17. Welcome to the show. Let's welcome him back, Mike Rupp. Mike, when you go on TV, what do they do to your head? Do they powder it up? Do they use cocoa butter? What do they do for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I figured if I can cover half my face with hair, the half that I can control because I don't have hair up top, then I only have to powder up this spot, right? So the only thing I got to make sure I don't get the glare off the forehead. So yeah, just powder up the forehead, take away the shine a little bit. You'd be amazed at my my knowledge of makeup now for those situations. And but yeah, just get it so it doesn't reflect too much. We don't want too much glow off the top.
Molly, you know about that, right? You know a little about hair and makeup.
I'll tell you what though, guys, when it's we have a makeup crew at NHL Network, and that's, they're awesome. I don't have to worry about it. But then when I do, whether it's MSG stuff or stuff in the past, doing remote stuff, they gave me a little package and I ran out of the stuff, so I needed to order some more stuff, and some of it's matched to my skin tone and all these things. So I go online, I'm flipping over like these compacts, and it says like M490Z. I'm like, is that my color? Like, I don't know what that is. So I just typed that in a Google search, and it's overwhelming trying to buy makeup. So I give a lot of credit to you women out there, man. That's a process.
I was gonna say, welcome to the world of being a woman.
Yes,
it's not easy. It is
not
easy. All right, guys, look, I know this is a Rangers podcast and there's a lot going on with them right now, and we will get to all that, but I feel like we have to start with Isaiah Meyer-Crothers. If you're not up to date, the Bruins signed Mitchell Miller to a contract a few days ago, despite the fact that it came out when the Coyotes initially drafted him that he was convicted in juvenile court for heinous and racially motivated bullying when he was 14. The Bruins did ultimately cut ties with Miller after significant backlash, and after it was apparent that Miller had not made amends with Isaiah or his family, or really done much to prove that he has come back from such horrible incidents, which I don't even know if you can come back from that. But Isaiah just released a statement in his own words, and I'll be honest with you guys, I'm really just sick to my stomach, and I feel like all we've been hearing is from everybody else. Isaiah's mom, the Bruins, Cam Neely, Miller's agent King, and now that we finally hear from him, I just feel like it's important for us to open the dialogue here. So I guess just, Rupp, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how this all unfolded, just from the Bruins to Miller's camp and everything in between.
Yeah, you know what, Molly, it's yeah, I agree with you too. And just full transparency as we're doing this, that Isaiah's message was just tweeted out there, right? So this is fresh with us reading it, and it's like I have goosebumps, but like bad goosebumps, like uncomfortable. Like I feel certain things right now from reading Isaiah's words there, and I know that you guys do as well. But like, so here's my thing, that just to talk about it from the Bruins standpoint.
Of course.
first off, just speaking in general terms, I believe in second chances. I do. I think most of us do.
Right.
But you have to. There's certain things that have to be done to get those second chances, and that's part of this situation here. But just from the Bruins standpoint of wanting to go and try to see if they can, maybe give that second chance or have this player bring him into this organization. I think for the level of what he's been accused of and what we've already found in court, and back when he was 14, what Mitchell Miller is done, it takes more than, I think, especially nowadays in our society, when we're finally talking about things a little more openly and things are starting to be more transparent out there, you have to have a plan in place. There has to be something. All right, this is what we are looking to do. This is what we have researched. This is what we have found. And this is the plan moving forward. I think at least being able to provide people with some things like that, it maybe would have been taken a little bit better, or at least, but it was just like this, we're signing this player. Hold on a second. You can't just, you can do, you could do that, but we, as a society, got to look out for one another. This is, I'm sorry, it's bullshit. Like, it is, you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's a way that this has to play out that didn't happen. So, I think since then with Cam Neely and the Bruins are taking ownership, I actually liked what Cam Neely said, where he's like, this is on us. This is a total shortfall on our end. I don't know where this goes, but I agree with you. Having Isaiah, I don't know. Something has to be done here. I think on a, and that's where it gets tough too. Like, what is genuine now at this point? Because he's been drafted, that's been rescinded. The contract's been given, that's been rescinded. At what point now are we getting to the point where it's not genuine? You know what I mean? And this sucks, because this kid just needs to, there needs to be some amends here. Some Isaiah needs to find some sort of closure to this so he can move on with his life. And from what we just read, that's not happening. And that's what tears me up, right? Like, you got to get on with your life. Not that you have to get on with it. I mean, he has to feel like this is closure, and he hasn't received that from Mitchell. So at least that's what we're seeing here. So, man, this is, I don't know. I don't know where it goes from here. I really don't.
Yeah, the way the whole thing unfolded. I mean, when I initially saw the Bruins announce it, I just remember almost tweeting, like, is this going to be worth it in 24 hours? Because I can tell you right now, the answer is no. Yeah. And I felt like as more and more information kept coming out, I mean, Cam Neely said it himself that when they first made the decision to go through with this, he did want to do diligence with the vetting process, but nobody thought to talk to the family.
Right.
I just think that was a massive oversight that I don't even know how it could be an oversight if you're putting as much emphasis as you are on the vetting process. The Bruins come out and say, we've been spending all this time with him, talking with his representation, taking notes on all the things that he's been doing. But the one thing that he hasn't actually done is sincerely apologize. What was it? A Snapchat message, which is what Isaiah details in his statement. And the big thing in that statement that I think jumped out to me the most, just as someone that, I remember what it was like to be a kid. I remember what middle school was like. Bullying is real. It's a thing. The thing that really just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up was how many times Isaiah drove home the fact that this kid, Mitchell Miller, kept trying to mask it as he was trying to be his friend. He wanted to be his friend. And that's what he kept telling Isaiah is, I want to be your friend. Like, let me sit next to you. I just want to be your friend. And that's probably all Isaiah really wanted, because isn't that what we all want in life is just to have friends? So, I mean, that aside, I think the other interesting layer here is the miscommunication between the NHL and the Bruins as well. And this kind of gets into the business side of things and to your point of where it's going to go from here, because the NHLPA could totally file a grievance. Could they not? With this whole situation, the contract was out there, the contract was signed as far as we know. And now for them to walk back on it, I mean, you probably know more about the NHLPA than me, but I do know that if he's under the AHL umbrella, he falls within the NHLPA jurisdiction. So it kind of puts the NHLPA in a weird spot, because it's like, do they go to bat for this kid? Because obviously I'm in agreement with you. Second chances are sometimes warranted, but in this case, it obviously wasn't. But how do you dance along that line of not wanting to set a precedent?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I don't know. It's just not the obvious statement. It's not a good situation. It never was a good situation. And the longer this goes on, and the more that Isaiah has to kind of rehash these moments, makes it that much worse. And so I don't know. I will say, I guess we're looking for some positives in this. I look to the response by Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, Nick Foligno inside that room, where we know Nick Foligno is newer to that organization, but he's been such a great leader in his time in the NHL. But I guess to look at it from a hockey standpoint and try to get better as a hockey community, it wasn't always, when an organization did something so out of touch like this, players usually wouldn't give their opinion. It would just be like, hey, our job is to play hockey. That's kind of above my pay grade.
Right.
No, this is not above anybody's pay grade. This is and I love the fact that these players spoke out too, because again, I know, and not too long ago, like I'm not like not too long ago at all. You don't have to go that far back to see players not saying anything. So I think it's about checks and balances, keeping people accountable. I feel like in this situation, then I'll just say this, not knowing, and there's a lot of unknowns here.
Mm-hmm.
I just try to think about it from the standpoint of my kids, any of our kids. Mitchell Miller was 14 years old. Isaiah was, I would assume, that age too when this was going on. Where's the checks and balances in the life of a kid that age?
Mm-hmm.
For Mitchell Miller? Yes, 14, I did stupid stuff, not like that, but you understand what I'm saying? But like, at some point why wasn't the right things and the right steps taken by parents, family members,
right,
friends, authority? Like, it's a child, these are kids. Like, so the fact that it's where it got to here now, yes, Mitchell Miller's fault 100%, but also is surrounding core people. Where were you guys?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't, this isn't just going to sweep under the rug and he's going to go pursue his hockey career. This was a total botch all around, and it's still continuing that way. And it's tough not to reiterate and restate the same thing, but the victim here in this is still the victim, because it's bringing this stuff back up again. And I don't know, man, it's tough. It's tough to read.
It is. I mean, I think in general, the Bruins botched the whole thing. Like, for all parties involved, I don't even think Mitchell Miller had to go through this. Like, again, he's 14 when it happened. And, I'm sure all he wants to do is to put that part of his life behind him. Clearly, he hasn't taken the necessary steps to do that, and he has to do that. If he wants to, start working toward making amends. But I don't even think anybody had to go through this whole thing if it weren't for the Bruins just trying to, pick up a guy that nobody would think to pick up for their own benefit, for their own on ice product. So I thank you for talking with me about it, because obviously this statement just came out and lots of raw emotion reading it. If you haven't read it, the Hockey Diversity Alliance posted it on their Twitter account. I highly recommend everybody go and read it. But if we're gonna turn to the Rangers and to actual hockey talk here, Gerard Gallant gave the Rangers a 6 out of 10 after the first 11 games or so. I'm curious, Rupp, what would you give the Rangers at this point in time?
So I would say, I mean, a 6 is coming from the coach who's overly happy. I give them a little bit more than that. I think the Rangers have been a team that has been just okay. They've been all right. they've had stretches where they look good and they have stretches where they don't. And right now, I think over the last couple of games, they've looked good. They just haven't gotten the results. I mean, you can even argue that back when was that when they got when they got shut out by the Islanders, when they had 40 plus shots, whatever.
Yeah.
Like they're getting some looks. They're not getting the finish. They're not closing out games like last night. So that's been an issue. But I would probably give them more like maybe a 7, like maybe a 7. Yeah. So but I think they're okay. And I think the one thing that a lot of these fan bases have to look at, and it's not trying to make excuses for their teams, but a lot of teams are going through this. There's a lot of really good teams, but we have a lot of question marks. And there's a lot of teams that we weren't expecting too much from that I'm not willing to crown yet. You know, I think those examples would be the Winnipeg Jets, Dallas Stars, New Jersey Devils. Like, I mean, they look great, and I love what I'm seeing from them, but we got to kind of slow it down here. So the Rangers, I think that it was kind of funny, though, because for the Ranger fans, obviously watching this, we posed this question on NHL Network the other day because I don't feel like there is a team. They said, who's the team that is best structured to win the Stanley Cup this year? So not necessarily what they look like right now, but on paper, and when you're looking at a roster and everything as far as checking off certain things, who's got everything covered? And the reason why we asked that is because right now, I don't think anybody feels good about any team. That team's going to win the cup or that team's going to the finals. Like, it can be anybody right now. But the Rangers came up as a team that I think when you look at the build of this team, the roster, they've got everything checked, in my opinion. All the boxes are checked. There's a lot of teams that don't have that. I mean, you could argue, let's look at the final 4 teams last year. You have, we'll put the Rangers aside. Then you got Tampa, who their blue line has question marks. They miss Andre Plot. They have a lot of question marks with how guys are going to be slotted up in their lineup. They haven't looked that great to this point either. They've played better lately. And then you can go out to Colorado. Colorado is, I mean, we're not totally sure on their goaltending. Their defense is good, but they're really banged up. They just said yesterday that they have all these guys missing time. And then their forward group, it's after their top line. And right now it's a significant drop. They lost some pieces. Edmonton's got goalie issues, and kind of the same story with them is depth scoring and D. So anyways, you just look across the board. I think the Rangers actually are set up really nice. Now it's a matter of just playing the right way, the right time of year. They're not there yet, but they don't really need to be. So I think they'll be fine. I think Gerard's doing what he can to push the buttons of Chris Kreider and use him as an example. And he's trying to keep everybody accountable. So we'll see how it works long term.
You made the Eastern Conference Finals 10 years ago with the Rangers. Is there such a thing as a hangover from that kind of season? Is this Rangers team having a hangover like we would on a Saturday morning after a Friday night bender? Is that an actual thing?
You know what? I don't think it's what I think it is teams and individuals. I think the hardest thing in the NHL is dealing with expectations and dealing with feeling like you've accomplished something. I mean, you could try to sugarcoat it all you want if you want to give yourself a pat on the back or, make the guys on your team feel good about things. But only one team was successful last year. I mean, every team comes in to win a Stanley Cup. So for the Rangers, I guess these hangovers, if you will, from teams or these drop-offs from what we've seen, I think it's due to teams feeling like they've accomplished something. You haven't accomplished anything. Like, listen, the Rangers are awesome last year and what we saw, and they're ahead of schedule. But they did that because they had a chip on their shoulder. Don't lose that chip. That chip is what separated you last year and made you go on that run. So I'm not saying this is happening with them, but you didn't accomplish anything. You didn't win a Stanley Cup. You didn't make it to the finals. So I think that's really important. And good coaches, and I'm sure Gerard Gallant, I had him. He's an awesome coach. Is stating that. John Tortorella is doing that in Philly after a couple games when Philly's the talk of the town and they've won some games. What's he do? He sits down, Konechny and Hayes in the third period. I think literally I went back and I watched. I didn't really see anything overly egregious that he would sit them. I think it was just like, hey, fellas, don't believe the hype. You haven't done anything yet. Like, this is a long-term process. We're going to sit those guys, get everybody's attention, and this team has kind of kept going a little bit. So, yeah, I think it's more of just don't lose your thunder, don't lose your edge. This was a team that I don't think many places in across the NHL had that much expectation for last year. Surprised a lot. Now all of a sudden they're considered to be a favorite. Can't let it get good to you in those situations. So I think it's just a matter of knowing that you still got to keep that edge and have that chip on your shoulder, I think.
What were your impressions of Gallant as a coach?
I loved him. He was honest as you can be. I mean, he was great. I felt like he was kind of the type of coach you wanted to play for. Almost like that high school hockey or high school football, I should say, mentality. Like, you want to go through a wall for that coach.
Yeah.
And I think that's special because you don't get that a lot of times. You can't manufacture it. You just feel it that he's in it with you. And I always felt like that with Gerard, but he's straightforward and honest. Like, he tells you, he almost does it. You know, you can tell he's got his, you know, when he speaks,
Yeah.
he has the same look on his face. And sometimes there's sarcasm, sometimes it's serious, sometimes he's mad, sometimes he's not, he's joking.
Yeah.
He looks the same, so you gotta like be able to read that.
Yeah.
And but he'll sit there and he'll just tell you something that you think that would just rip you down, and he gets that little smirk and gives you a wink. He's like, I know you got this, like, come
Yeah.
on. So he believes in you, and I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I definitely think he's a player's coach. That's the impression I've gotten from him. And it's funny how you kind of described the way that he talks, because it's true, you know, obviously it's a different kind of setup for the media. It's a little bit more formal, but you toss him a question and it could have absolutely nothing to do with a specific player, but he'll just get right into the point that he wants to make, kind of like what he did with Chris Kreider, you know, talking about how he's got to be pulling in the same direction as the rest of the team. And as of late, he's feeling like he's pulling the other way. I didn't even ask about Chris Kreider specifically, but when he's got a point to make, he's going to make it.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important to pay attention to who they're making points with too.
Right.
I mean, we know Jacob Trouba is the captain of this team, deservingly so, but let's not forget some of those other guys that were in that conversation. And Chris Kreider was right at the forefront.
Absolutely.
Longest tenured Ranger. You talked, Jake, about, you know, 10 years ago. That was Kreider's debut, right? He's been with this organization for a long time. You know, he doing it to Chris Kreider, he knows he'll get a reaction. He knows that he'll respond the right way. That's what he's looking for here. He's just looking to squeeze the group, and I think that's important.
Yeah, he did the same thing with Alexis Lafreniere last season.
Yeah.
Put him on the fourth line in practice, put him on the fourth line in a game, and I think it did. I remember asking Alexis point blank, like, you know, are you the kind of guy that, you know, responds to that kind of, you know, coaching? And he was like, "Oh yeah, you know, he definitely has."
You got to be careful with that. It's funny because we, well, the other one that comes to mind is, remember the Kako scratching in the last game of the playoffs, and it was kind of like, I think because of where they were in the playoffs, and it kind of like snuck under. I mean, everybody took note, but it was like the game's so big, it was whatever. I love where Kako's game is and where it's going. And I don't know if he finds another level without that. I've been the player in that situation because I guarantee you, he was stewing all summer.
Yeah.
And he was working, and he knew, I'm going to, you know, I like this guy, but I'm going to stick it to him. I'm going to show him. I'm going to this. It'd be great to, you know, get that from Kako at some point. But I think that that's a motivating factor, you know, for him for sure. But it's, you know, you got to kind of plant those seeds and challenge guys, you know, and you got to see what they can do and how they respond. And I will say this though, is that with Scotty Hartnell working the other day, and we're talking about the torts thing, sitting, connecting, and hey, they reply or start responding the right way. Yeah. And I remember thinking about this, and it jumped in my head. I'm like, hey, when you were in Columbus with torts, I remember you got scratched or benched. I recall you had like a hat trick or something the next game.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't really remember. So our research looked it up. So he got scratched the one game.
Yeah.
Then he had like 6 points in his next 4 games. And there's another one where he got sat a whole third period and that was kind of like the talk. And then the next game he had the hat trick. So I'm like, you got to be careful though, because like a player like Lafreniere, you're going to say the right things, but if you respond too well, he's like, this is how I motivate this guy.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean?
This is the button to push.
Yeah. This is now Scotty Hart, I'm like, Hartsey, I'm like, you responded too well though. You have to kind of taper it down where it's like, it kind of worked. But he's like, that's how I motivate him. So you got to be careful how you respond, or the coach is going to be like, oh, I want Repper going. Let's sit his butt down one more time. But, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, John Tortorella is totally one of those coaches that also is a button pusher, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
When the refs miss a tripping call like they did against the Islanders, what is the reaction in the locker room right after that? Because it's not like the NBA where players just yelling in the ref's face immediately after a call. You don't get that in NHL.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, but not as much, I feel like. What is the feel in the locker room after that? Is that something you guys are talking about? Like, God damn, that John Jones, that ref missed that call. I'm pissed off, and you remember that the next time he's officiating?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly talk about it and you vent about it. I mean, as much as fans complain about refereeing, I mean, we certainly do as players. It's just, there's carryover too. I mean, there's a lot of players before games, and you're looking even at the matchup on paper and get the stat pack, and you're going right to the referees and seeing who's reffing the game. And sometimes guys are like, oh, hey, you got to kind of taper our game accordingly. But I think it's really important in the NHL to it's important to just move past bad calls. And I find that you get a lot of coaches that I think this is really important, is coaches that are on the bench. They will just tell their players to shut their mouths. If anybody's talking to referees, it's me. And what that does is, because I agree, when there's a missed call or a bad call, it starts eating at you. We know as fans watching, but as players too. And you got to turn that page and keep going. And you can't let that frustration come in. So if you're yelling at the referee and you're yelling from the bench, and that happens all the time, you got to cut the cord on it at some point. Let the coach be the guy to do it. You express it whatever, and let the coach handle that, because you've got to move past it, because there's such a small margin in winning and losing. If you're going to go in between periods and stewing about that, it's like you're almost giving yourself an excuse, and you can't lose the edge that you have. And it's funny because the NHL, with everything between that, calls, being benched, guys slashing you or whacking you on the ice, it's all about funneling emotion and funneling it the right way and using it to motivate and to drive you. And if you don't, it can take you down. That's for sure.
Let's close with this. Because you have a drum set behind you, our producer Andrew Hartz is actually a drummer. He drums for a country singer, Jessica Lynn. Could you drum us a little song before we send you on?
To be completely honest with you, I'm not at home. This is not mine. I am literally the most non-musically inclined person you'll ever see. I love music. I listen to music. I can talk music. I like every type of music. I'm the worst singer ever. I can't play anything. I actually played the trumpet in high school for a little bit. That didn't last that long, but
that was my next question.
Yeah.
I played the clarinet.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Little Squidward action.
Yeah, I love it. So it's funny. It's like that's one thing I wish that I was talented in is music, because I love it. I love listening to it, but I am the worst. If everybody's clapping to I'm on the offbeat clap. I'm terrible with all that stuff.
That's too bad. Well, I freestyle rap, but I have to be in the right mindset, late at Friday, Saturday night, enough things in the system where my mind is elevated a little bit to get there. And I'm sick, and it's too early in the morning to do that. So I won't. Mike Rupp, follow him on Twitter @Rupper17. Check out That's Hockey Talk, the podcast. They go live Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Rupp, great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on Up in the Blue Seats. We'll do it again later in the season.
Awesome, guys. Anytime, and enjoy what you guys are doing.